Hey, everybody, and welcome to episode 3 of Al's a Son of a Bitch podcast, the journey of Alzheimer's, unscripted, uncensored, and unapologetic. Today's episode is Ready or Not, Somebody Has to Adult. So this will be a fun episode. I'd like to just kind of start off and tell you a little bit more about myself so that you kind of get to know me a little bit. Uh, so I am married. I've been married this year will be 25 years. I don't know how she's put up with me that long, but thankfully she has. I am really, really lucky. She is amazing. She's strong, patient, supportive wife. Over these last 3.5 years, I've put her through the freaking ringer with um, really kind of a challenge with also Ozempic and destroying of my pancreas. And she has just been a solid rock for myself and our family. So thanks to her, we are all here together. I'm a father, two amazing kids who are now adulting on their own. They're putting their own stamp on this world, and good for them. I'm very proud of them. Of course, if you follow me on social media at all, you'll know that I am also Champ's dad. Champ is our 1-year-old, 90-pound Labrador Retriever. He's quite a joker. Uh, I'm a former Marine. I was in the Marine Corps from 90 to 94. I'm a Desert Storm veteran. Uh, was accepted after Desert Storm to the Marine Security Guard program. Slow down a little bit. That is embassy guards at the embassies overseas. So that was pretty awesome. Spent some time in Panama, back in Saudi Arabia after Desert Storm, and a little bit of time in Yemen. I am currently on the board of a veterans nonprofit local here in the Denver metro area where we advocate for veterans housing issues, and we work with the homeless uh, veteran contingent here. And I am also a realtor, been in the business now for 10 years. Um, Before becoming a realtor and being adopted by Jim and Pam Peters, I was a private investigator. After the Marine Corps, well, before I went into the Marine Corps, I had taken some classes to try to become a paralegal. And smartly, no law firm out there would hire a 19-year-old kid with a certificate, a piece of paper that basically said you completed 8 weeks worth of legal training, you know? Um, but I did get to meet an amazing guy by the name of Joe Arsenault. He was a former Marine. He was just post-Vietnam era and was talking to me about the Marine Corps. And one day, well, I'm going to save that story because it's kind of special, but ultimately ended up in the Marine Corps. Uh, Signed up for the Marine Corps, was gone in a month. Went to boot camp. Signed up in January, was in boot camp by February, and the rest, as they say, is history. Um, but Joe was an investigator. He was part of the education process of that paralegal course. So I got to know Joe, hung out with him, and interned with him. Basically, just hung around with him. And when I got out of the Marine Corps, I went back to work for him and worked for another company out of Colorado Springs. It was Glenn and Stacy Wilson with Pikes Peak, and they kind of helped mentor me along the way. Joe was more on the legal end of the spectrum for investigative work. Um, Stacy and Glenn was just kind of an all-around investigative firm and company. So I got to know them, got to work with them. Uh, Started actually my own business called Eagle Investigations. We started it in the basement of my mom and dad's house. Put a bunch of marketing stuff together. Uh, my very first case that I worked on was for a friend of ours that was being charged with sexual assault of his stepdaughter. So I did a little bit of work on that, obviously not knowing a damn thing of what the hell I was doing. And fast forward, ended up doing that for 22 years before making the jump and the transition then into real estate. Did some pretty cool stuff that we'll share in other episodes. But throughout that time, one of the things that I had gotten myself into was child custody, dependency, and neglect cases. So, mom and dads that were going through divorce, if there were any questions about the way the one parent was handling parenting time, um, I would be hired by the law firm then to try to investigate, figure out, dig up dirt, do surveillance, background checks, that kind of stuff. Uh, but on the child custody end of it, um, and ultimately I was hired by a county on the western slope of Colorado, so on the other side of the mountains, by that county's Child Protective Services department. They had questions about one of their caseworkers that was handling cases of children who are being reintroduced into, to another parent. So a parent, for whatever reason, reason or another, lost custody, and that child was then in the uh, Child Protective Services system, whether it be foster care or with another family member. And then that parent had benchmarks to achieve to try to have their child, reintegrated in with them. They were concerned that their uh, caseworker was falsifying reports. They were getting contradicting information, and they didn't want to go in house with it in case it was systemic to the entire department or system. So they hired me from the outside, which way the outside, right? I'm in the Denver metro area. Um, so I was tasked with observing, documenting, surveilling uh, a mother who had already gained custody of two of her children, and they were working on reintroducing the third back with her. These kids were 8, 6, and 4 years old. So the scenario was on Friday afternoon, she was to pick up the 4-year-old from the foster parent, and she would then have the child throughout that evening overnight, and then the next morning would the child would be picked back up by the foster parent. Um, that way they could see how they interact. The 4-year-old interacted with the 8 and 6-year old, and the caseworker was then supposed to check on them, right, throughout the evening, check in with the mom, check in with the kids. Um, so this was in the summertime. It was warm. It was hot. Even up in the mountains, it was hot. I remember sitting in my car, just it was sweat. I was sweaty. It was hot. No matter what you're under. I was undercover, so we couldn't be sitting there with the windows open. Um, the mom lived in an apartment complex. It was about, I don't know, 150 to 200 units total. Uh, and the buildings then kind of surrounded the perimeter. So the parking lot then was in the middle of all of these buildings. The mom lived on the first floor corner unit, and between the buildings then was kind of a walkway that would go out into like a courtyard, if you will, or a park area that the kids would hang out in and play in. It was a busy community. Lots of coming and going, lots of cars in and out of that parking lot. Kind of made it hard to not be noticed and not be bring awareness to myself. But uh, as the sun started to kind of set that night and that evening, uh, they had been outside. Mom and the kids had been outside. Everything was good to go. Mom was there. The kids were doing great. Kids were hanging out and playing. And as the sun started to go down, mom took the kids in. So we're, talking about 7:30. So I thought, cool, must be, time to start unwinding, get dinner. After about, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes, mom comes out, shuts the door, and gets in her car and leaves. She takes off. Well, my job wasn't to follow the mom. I wasn't concerned at that point where she was going. My concern was the kids. Who was watching the kids? At the time that I'd been there, and this by this time it had been a couple of hours, uh, no other adult had come and gone from the apartment. So I didn't know if somebody else was in there, but at that point, nobody had come and gone. As it started to get darker, I could see more inside. The lights came on, and I could see the kids. They were in there hanging out. They were playing. You could see them messing around. But I didn't see any adult. I didn't see any adult on deck. About 10 minutes after the mom left, the door opens and the 4-year-old comes out by himself. Shut the door, um, and starts to wander around. Now, keep in mind the front of the apartment opens up to the parking lot. Mom's gone. No other adult that I'm aware of in the apartment. I wasn't aware of like any boyfriends or any other family members in and around. Uh, and the 4-year-old then takes off, starts playing, grabbed a ball, went off in between the buildings there into that kind of like courtyard, probably not a courtyard because it wasn't surrounded, but a little park, grassy area. And then the next thing you know, and I can still see it. I can still see the 4-year-old. So I've got constant visual of the child. And then the child takes off to an adjacent building kind of in behind it. So at this point, um, the 6 and 8-year-olds still have not come out. So the 4-year-old's by himself. So I get out of my car and make my way over there just to check in, make sure there's nothing that, what are you going to do, right? I want to make sure the 4-year-old's okay. No other adult is there, nobody over supervising it. Mom's gone. Um, So I'm watching the kid. I'm just hanging out, kind of trying to blend in. And the kid he was fine. He was just playing with the ball, kicking it back and forth, picking up rocks, just the things a 4-year-old would do. He stayed in that parky, grassy area. 4 or 5 minutes goes by, and the 6-year-old comes out. So he joins in on the game, right? It's two little boys. He joins in on the game. They're playing kickball back and forth. So I found a place to be able to sit, observe. Nobody else was around. No other adults were around. No other kids were around. At this point, they were still in the grass area. Um, Another 5 minutes, 6 minutes goes by, and I hear a woman's name yelling for the kids. The mom had come back. So, she had been gone for, I don't know, 15, 20, 25 minutes, somewhere in there. It's starting to get really dark. Luckily, there was some lights for the court area there. But for that period of time, that 4-year-old and that 6-year-old, actually all three of them, right, were unattended, no adult supervision. Um, they were just left there to do what it is they wanted to do. So as the night progressed, a couple hours later, we're starting to get pretty dark, 9 o'clock. I'm still sitting there. I couldn't go anywhere. I had to make sure I had to be there until lights were out, right? Everybody was in bed. Um, a few hours later, around 9 p.m., mom comes out, and there had been a gathering of adults at the adjacent building, and they were just sitting in some chairs, drinking. I could tell they were drinking alcohol, um, hanging out, listening to music, and she went and joined them. Uh, Closed the door behind her. So I assumed the kids were in bed. Uh, and about 10 minutes later, the door opens and the three kids come out together. The mom had no idea that the kids had left the apartment. No, nobody saw them come out. So they start running in the parking lot. They start horsing around. Off to the side, there was some traffic. There was a big vehicle there, so the people that had gathered really couldn't see the kids. Um, so again, I get out of the car, right? I want to see what's going on, make sure they're okay. Luckily, they'd only been out for maybe 2, 3 minutes before somebody heard him, and mom got up and went and figured it out and found him. Uh, but for those 2, 3, 4 minutes, um, they were again unsupervised. Nobody had any idea. The mom was absolutely clueless. So she gathers the kids, they go all back inside, and that's the last that I'd seen them all night long. So that was two instances where some configuration of the three kids had been unsupervised and basically nobody was adulting. Oh, and did I mention that in this small little apartment complex, we had already discovered and identified three registered child sex offenders that lived in that same complex. Uh, man, telling you this story and just visualizing that and kind of reliving it, I can still I'm feeling in my stomach right now, just kind of turning, getting on all kind of knots. Um, I can remember the emotion of these kids that I felt that were alone, unsupervised. The 4-year-old being by himself. He could have gone anywhere at that point, right? Nobody would have known if I hadn't been there to watch. Um, a major state highway was not very far away. Uh, he he could have literally made his way that direction. Um, and then the dilemma, right? As I guess you could call it as the adult on deck, wondering if I should be calling um, Child Protective Services. Should I be calling the police department? When the kids were in the parking lot, should I have gone up, bitch slapped the mom and asked her what the hell she was doing? Uh, Trust me, those were all things that went through my mind and some of the emotions that I was feeling. But now I have a question for you. As I'm telling you this story, and this is a true story, this isn't some fictitious thing that I generated through, the internet or watching it on a movie. Um, what are your thoughts? How would you have handled that? As the mom that is supposed to be responsible for those kids' safety and welfare, should she get those kids back? The two kids that she had already been given custody back of, should she lose the custody of those kids? Um, in that moment of the emotion and the dilemma, being the adult that was observing this, I can tell you that adulting was truly a son of a bitch at that moment, right? Throughout our lives, we all need somebody to help us adult, make those decisions, the tough decisions, um, to protect our loved ones. Even as adults, we still need somebody to help us adult, right? We still need somebody with more knowledge, more experience, just having lived more life than us, right? That could be our spouses, our bosses, friends, family, teachers, professionals in a particular field. Um, but what better example is there than Alzheimer's or somebody that's being affected by Alzheimer's, somebody that is a victim of Alzheimer's and dementia, needing somebody to advocate for them or to stand up and be the adult, right? Just like those kids. Those kids at that moment, they needed an adult. They needed somebody to protect their safety and their well-being. Our journey through Alzheimer's was a while ago. My dad passed in 2020. I think he was diagnosed somewhere around 2012, if I remember correctly. So that journey from that initial diagnosis and seeing those signs and those symptoms um, was a while ago. And as I've reflected on this podcast and going down this road. I think the one thing that time that has passed has provided me is a sense of perspective and clarity. Looking back at that journey, um, I tend to be somewhat retrospective and think about what could have been, right? Or what we could have done. And I'm constantly debriefing myself on situations, whether it be real estate transactions or fundraisers that we do for our veterans organization. Um, you know, we play the would you, could you, should you game, right? Or maybe that's just the Marine in me. I don't know. Uh, the journey of Alzheimer's, though, it's a truly crazy one. A new obstacle to be overcome on a daily basis, right? Every day there's just something new. Today is not like yesterday with Alzheimer's, and tomorrow will not be like the next. Um, but what I do know as I look back on our journey, the victims of Alzheimer's need you. They need their loved ones. They need their caretakers to step up and adult for them. They need you to make those tough decisions. They need you to be the one to stand by them and fight for them and advocate for them. I'm not saying fight with them. Um, but that means from freaking day one, right? The time to start putting a plan in place or start making a difference is on that very first day that you ask yourself the question of, could this be something more than just aging or forgetfulness, right? Um, if you've ever asked yourself that question, now is the time to ask. Now is the time to step up and be that superhero, right? And advocate and be the adult for your loved one. Uh, Make that call to a doctor, get a test done, uh, or whoever you can or you're comfortable with about and get a test done and get the results. Find out what's happening. There's so many different facets to the Alzheimer's dementia journey now that the sooner you're aware, the sooner you can put the plan in place to help you and the victim of Alzheimer's. It's important to remember you need to put a plan in place as much for you as you do for your loved one, right? Um, Alzheimer's is not going to make adulting easy. It's not. Remember, Al's a son of a bitch, right? There's a reason why my dad called it that. There's a reason why we named this podcast Al's a son of a bitch. It's not going to be easy. Start that conversation with the victim, right? With your loved one. Find out what it is they want. Find out what it is that they need. Find out how you can help make their journey uh, easier for them. And as you do that, make sure you're keeping yourself in mind as you're helping them. You have to make sure that you're keeping it as easy or as good at least as you can for yourself. It's important for you to take care of you. The statistics are out there that caregivers suffer immensely with caregiving for somebody that has Alzheimer's and dementia. And you can't take care of them if you can't take care of yourself. Every journey is going to be different. So understand that if you do put some kind of a plan in place, that plan is going to get screwed up, right? You have to have a contingency. You just have to have the ability and the know to change directions and at a moment's notice. Uh, Talk about the inevitable things that Alzheimer's is going to present. Uh, they're not fun conversations, right? Um, I think the biggest thing I remember, not the biggest thing, the one thing I remember with my dad was driving. Driving was like his sense of freedom. And to take that away from him, you you would have thought we were pulling his toenails out one by one. Um, and he would just fight about wanting to drive. Um, and in the end, what it came down to was he just wanted the keys. My mom finally told him one day, fine, here's the keys, go. I'm not going to ride with you, but go for it. Not saying that's the right way to approach it, but from then on, he never asked to drive again. But what he wanted was the keys. That was his sense of knowing whatever it was. Um, but he never argued about that again. Um, Start thinking about as the journey progresses, and it's not going to be, it may not be a fast journey. As the caregiver, have a plan in place for you to be able to get the help that you need, right? Whether that is bringing somebody into the home so that you can have a break and be able to take care of your own physical and mental health, whether that be checking out memory care facilities. Uh, one thing I wish we would have done with my dad sooner than later was explore that. Um, Investigate those so that you understood, so you have an understanding of what they are. Uh, I kind of wonder if it wouldn't have been a bad idea to have him be a part of that so that he could see it for himself, right? Um, with many things in the world, there's a lot of misinformation and myths and stories, and I'm not saying that they're not true, but there's also a lot of the facilities out there that are just amazing. Um, It's one of the things that I hear a lot of people that I talk to as to whether they're place their parent, whether not to place their loved one. When is the right time to do it? When isn't? When is it too late? Um, have that conversation. And I think if you're early on, I would even recommend having that with your loved one. Um, it's really, really important to make sure that the end of life directives are in place, right? Medical powers of attorney, powers of or wills all together, where they're make sure that all that's in place. Make sure if they own real estate, their real estate stuff is in place. Uh, Not fun conversations, right? Unfortunate conversations, but but conversations that need to be and should be had um, earlier than later. One of the things that we were taught in the Marine Corps in preparation for whatever we were working on is the 7 Ps. Prior proper planning prevents piss poor performance, right? And that really applies to anything in life. And as we've been talking about this podcast and researching and having guests on, really that plan is really important. But again, it's not just for the person diagnosed or the victim of Alzheimer's and dementia. That plan should be including a plan for the caregiver as well. Um, as you work through this journey, as you support your loved one, as you are the adult to make those decisions and carry out um, the tough decisions for your loved one, the most important thing is to remember you are not alone. It is totally normal as a caregiver and a loved one to feel lost and confused, but you are not alone. It's normal for a caregiver or a loved one to feel overwhelmed, to be frustrated, to feel helpless. Those are all normal. But remember, you are not alone. There are resources out there. There is help. There is education. And more than anything, there are millions of you out there, right? It didn't seem to me that going through that journey was really anything that we ever talked about outside of like, you know, the family kind of a thing. You don't walk into a group at a party with a bunch of strangers and say, "Hey, how you doing? I'm a caregiver. I got somebody that's got Alzheimer's." Um, but you shouldn't be afraid to seek out that help, right? Adulting is not meant to be done alone. Adulting is a son of a bitch, right? Uh, Adulting is being a superhero and knowing what you don't know, knowing what experience you don't have, and then being able to step back, realize that, and find it, right? Find out what you don't know. Find those resources and reach out to them to get the help that you need to be able to provide the best journey to your loved one through through their journey. The one thing that I look back and I think about with the kid's story, right, when I was doing that surveillance on them, is where is the freaking adult? Where is the person those kids are supposed to entrust and protect them? I truly believe that being a loved one and a caregiver of someone with Alzheimer's and dementia is one of the toughest and most thankless things that anybody can be asked of anybody, right? As the caregiver, as that journey progresses, the victim's frustration is taken out on the person that's closest to them, and that's their loved one. Um, but it's our responsibility as that caregiver, as that loved one, to make sure that our loved one is protected, and most importantly, they're loved. Ask yourself this one question. If you were the victim, if you were the one that was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, would your loved one, would they step up and be your adult? I appreciate you spending some time with me on today's episode. Again, this is a journey of Alzheimer's, unscripted, uncensored, and unapologetic, right? It's going to be real and raw. I would love to hear from you. I would love to hear what you think of this podcast. If you have any ideas that you would like explored on the podcast, I'm open to ideas. If you'd like to be on the podcast, I would love to have your stories and your experiences shared with our community here. If you like what we're trying to do, help us build out this community and share our podcast. We're on all the platforms: Apple, Amazon, Spotify, iHeart, Android. Uh, Video of this podcast will be put up on YouTube. Uh, you can find us on all the social medias as well. Share this with your family and friends. Um, it's kind of interesting. I was thinking about this. I mentioned to a friend last week that um, this might be more therapeutic and advocacy for my own self, right? Um, Having family, my dad and my grandmother both with Alzheimer's. Uh, but really, this is multi-generational, right? Uh, my generation is dealing with the older generation that's already kind of in the midst of the Alzheimer's and dementia. The younger generation is going to have to get prepared to be able to deal with my generation as I get older because, the numbers are only going to get higher. So, uh, kind of a sick thought, isn't it? But I appreciate you. I appreciate you taking the time. I appreciate your support. I love hearing back from you and from your support, your feedback. Uh, Before we sign off, here's to Al's, Dad. Here's to Al's.